Hey, what's up guys, it's Darius, and I recently made a video about if smartphone cameras can replace point-and-shoots, in which I compared the Galaxy S7 with the Nexus 6P and the Sony RX100. But what about budget DSLRs? Can smartphones replace those? To test that, I will compare the Galaxy S7 with the Xperia Z5 and the Nikon D3200. The Samsung Galaxy S7 has definitely one of, if not the best cameras out there on any smartphone. It has a 12 megapixel shooter with an aperture of f1.7, OIS, and a 1/2.6 inch sensor. The Sony Xperia Z5 was actually requested by a lot of people because it ranked highest on DSLR and was only recently beaten by the S7 in the HCC 10, and naturally my expectations are high. It has a 23 megapixel shooter with an aperture of f2.0, hybrid autofocus, OIS, and a 1/2.3 inch sensor. By the way, all the Xperia Z5s, the compact, normal one, and the premium have all the same camera. As a side note, it also has a dedicated shutter button, which is very nice. Fun fact, actually both the S7 and the Z5 are water resistant, which means you can use them in the rain or even in the pool, which is really cool. Now I know that the Nikon D3200 isn't the newest camera out there anymore, but it's still very good and I used to shoot all my videos on it. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor and the rest really depends on the lens. For this comparison, I will use the kit lens, the Nikkor 18-105 f3.5-5.6, and it also has OIS. Now the lens can make a very big difference. Here, for example, is a picture taking with the kit lens, and here's one with a much more expensive Sigma 18-35, which I normally use to film. Again, for the sake of this comparison, I've chosen the kit lens because this comparison is meant for the average consumer and they tend to most often stick to the kit lens. Now I know that a smartphone cannot truly replace a DSLR in terms of sensor size and interchangeable lenses, for example, but this comparison is really just about the image quality, and if you, as the average consumer, even still need to buy any budget DSLRs just for taking a couple of pictures if you have a great smartphone. Now the last camera comparison which I did, a lot of people didn't like that I limited the RX100 to f3.5. I did that so that the depth of field would be similar due to the different sensor sizes. Now I will leave all the cameras in auto mode, which means the aperture is not adjusted to the different sensor sizes. Yes, I know they all have manual modes, but for the sake of this comparison, I will leave them all in auto. Of course, all are unedited and come straight out of the cameras. Starting with the images taken in good lighting, they all are very detailed and crisp. Sure, the S7 has less megapixels, so in theory, when you zoom in it isn't as sharp, but it actually often was even the sharpest out of all of them. In terms of colors, the S7 tends to take warmer looking images, while the Z5 is slightly more cooler. The D3200 often is very accurate, but also slightly more on the cooler side. Most of the time I prefer the S7 due to these saturated colors, which are pleasing to the eye, but the D3200 is probably the most realistic. For outside images, I know that the S7 was just gonna perform amazingly, but the Z5 really surprised me and it was very close. I really like the bright saturated colors in both of them. Inside, the Z5 isn't as great as the S7 most of the time, but it still does fine. White balance is good on all of them, but the S7 is usually the most accurate one. Just speaking in terms of it doing it automatically. In terms of exposure, they all do fine. The D3200 is usually the most accurate one, but sometimes can be a little darker compared to the rest. The others do fine, but especially the Z5 tends to sometimes overexpose, as you can see in this example of my cat. Dynamic range is also good, but it's probably the best on the D3200 due to the larger sensor, and the same goes for depth of field. It is just far superior, and you can really see that in the shot with the tulip or with the rain on the window. In terms of low light, there were some bigger differences. The S7 is advertised as being amazing in low light, and while it usually is brighter than the others, the images often have a yellowish tint to them, and in extreme low light can even be desaturated, as you can see in this example from the other camera comparison video. But overall, it does do a good job. The Z5 sadly is not good at all. The images are often desaturated, grainy, and like in this example of the shoe picture, just very dark. The D3200 is pretty good due to its larger sensor, which can just capture a lot more light. It mostly is better than the smartphones, but it isn't particularly good for a DSLR. And lastly, there's video. Image quality wise, I definitely without a doubt prefer the S7, and it also is the only one that captures 4K video. However, the jello effect in 4K is very annoying and needs to be fixed with a software update. The Z5 is nice, but for some weird reason it is restricted to 1080p. The D3200 is fine, but it is manual focus only really. If you want to see any further video samples, all my older videos were shot on it, so you can go back and check those out and judge the image quality. In the end, all are great cameras. My favorite is still the S7, mostly due to the simplicity and how quick it is. Seriously, the autofocus is just insanely fast. Literally the fastest I've ever seen. I love it. The Z5 is great for outdoor shots with a lot of resolution, and I like the dedicated shutter button, but it didn't fully live up to the hype in my opinion. The D3200 is still a great camera, and since it's a DSLR, it has some advantages. For example, in terms of depth of field, it is definitely the best one out there out of all of them. I can still really recommend this camera, and it's very budget friendly, and it's great as a first camera, but if you can spend a little more, I would go with a newer model or a mirrorless one. Now these are all just my opinions. Let me know what you guys think and what camera you prefer in the comments down below. Also, if you want to check the images out more in detail, I will have the full resolution samples linked below. If you want to buy any of the smartphones or the camera, and I will also have other recommendations for cameras in the description down below, make sure to use these links, it would really help me out. There's also a link to my other camera comparison video if you're interested, where I compare the S7 versus the Nexus 6P versus the Sony RX100. Thank you guys for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave this video a like down below, and don't forget to subscribe, especially to not miss my Xperia Z5's review, and especially my living with the Galaxy S7 Edge video. See you in the next one, bye!